bowling fans, this is Dustin J. Markowitz coming to you taped, as always, from the gem along the Colorado River, Laughlin, Nevada, bringing you yet another edition of your favorite bowling show, Bowling Evolved. Joining me, as always, is the co-host with the most, one of the most premier left-handers in PBA Tour history. Frankly, you know what? There's so many good things I can say about you, Eric. I think I'm just going to stop right there. So, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Eric Forkel. Eric, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, partner. How are you?
I'm doing very well, very well. It's going to be a very interesting show tonight. We have a lot to talk about, and I think first and foremost, I want to welcome all of our new listeners. I know that the Jet promotion that we ran, giving away the new Jet Burner bowling ball, has come to an end. We have gained several hundred new fans, and I just want to say thank you very much to Jet Bowling, and to any of you who have not listened to our show before, welcome.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. We didn't have to pay him, too. That's pretty good.
That's a bonus, isn't it?
It's a big time bonus.
You know, Jet Bowling has had such an amazing little run there. We had Chris Crossett on the show not too long ago, and yeah, it's amazing to see how far that small company has really progressed. And you know, Eric, you see a lot of people starting to throw their equipment.
Yeah, you know, and good for them, because you know, small companies trying to crack it in this game is not easy. It's very challenging. The main brands are very strong, and it's really hard for the little companies to break into it. But glad to see that they're making a little breakthrough. Good for them.
Absolutely. You look at a lot of other small companies, including the two companies we represent. Storm started as a small company, as did Motive, and now they're two of the most powerful ball companies in the world.
Yep. So, I mean, great things can happen with small things. So, if that would be the model, you know, if they're the model, then these little companies, they have a lot of work to do, but I guess the sky's the limit.
Absolutely. Well, jumping right into things, our first topic tonight is going to be something that a lot of bowlers are already talking about, which was the Tournament of Champions and, of course, the PBA League. Going first into the Tournament of Champions, of course, Pete Weber, 50 years old, wins the TOC. Amazingly, you know, it takes over the record for most majors won in a career. Eric, I mean, looking at this from your perspective, obviously you bowled with Pete out on tour quite a bit. What do you think? What's your thought process on him winning a TOC at 50 years old?
Well, again, I guess obviously age is a number, and if you're as great as he is and your role matches up to what's out there, you can do fantastic things, and he proved that once again. I mean, you know, he's one of the greatest. He's definitely top 5 of all time. So if he has something to work with, and he's throwing the greatest balls on the planet, what can I tell you? He's working the Storm product, and with his axis rotation on the ball, it's pretty phenomenal what he can do when other people they have to chase it over that gutter cap, and he don't have to go that far. I mean, he's in, but he don't have to get that far. A lot of it is the way the ball comes off his hand. He's just got a great touch, a great feel. And I think as he's gotten older, it's only gotten better. I mean, he don't throw the ball as fast as he used to, but he doesn't have to. He can generate that rotation, and with the way today's conditions are, and especially in the majors, if you notice when he won the U.S. Open, he was in a very similar spot. I believe he won it with a frantic, and now he's throwing the gold, the pearl, the IQ pearl, another strong pearlized ball. But again, he's in a similar spot, maybe a tad deeper, but in a similar spot, doing a similar thing. And he's just great at it. He really is. And you know, he rises to the occasion. He handles the pressure very well, and it's kind of in his wheelhouse. Believe it or not, you've got guys like Palermo, Belmonte, Rash, all these Tommy Jones, all these high rev players. And Pete's got a pretty good hand, but you know, he doesn't have their game. But he doesn't need that. He has that right roll, and the ball just comes off his hand so effortlessly, and it's so clean, and it's how can I explain it? Just his rotation matches up beautifully. It just does. It's almost like poetry. It's that good.
I like the way you put that. I know I read an article not too long ago by Jeff Riggles that he was talking a little bit about watching Pete as he's progressed through his career, how when he first started, he was very much the consummate power player, high rev, high speed. And as you said, you know, as he's gotten older, he's developed into this more well-rounded player. And it's interesting to me, and as many bowlers would discuss, and Eric, even you and I have discussed this, bowling is one of the unique sports or games, if you will, that as you get older, age might not necessarily mean what it does in other sports. You would think, it would seem at least, that a bowler's prime is not necessarily, say, 22 to 25 or 27 like it is in baseball or basketball or football. In bowling, it almost seems like it's from the mid to late 30s into the late 40s.
Yeah, I would definitely say that the players in their 30s to 40s, that's like prime time. But again, Walter Ray, a few years ago, he was the player of the year, and I believe he was 49 or 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that Weber can win a major at being 50 years old is not surprising. Now, if it was a different pattern out there and you were forced into a different zone, well, then the advantage is not in his favor. I mean, the fact that he beat all the really high-rev players is just not only a credit to his great talent, but it just goes to show if you have a certain trick with your roll. Like I said, there's really nobody who's got, I'd say, 90-degree axis rotation. There's really nobody who does it as well. I mean, there may be some guys who do it, but nowhere near as good as him. And he's very unique. That's just like there's nobody like Osku and Belmo. There's nobody like them who do it as well as they do it. That's why they are unique. So when you run into these unique situations, and obviously the condition called for a very deep inside shot, and the guys with more rev, speed, and power, it's to their advantage. Then again, you got somebody like Pete throwing the state-of-the-art equipment, and his ball hit very hard. It didn't hit soft at all. He didn't leave no weak tens.
No.
Shot a pretty good 220 game, and 220 was more than enough on that in that situation, considering what Belmo was doing. He was throwing the ball over the gutter cap, and as good as it was, and those players, the two-handed players, obviously they can do that because of the speed and the rotation that they can create on the ball. So if they got to get into the 6th or 7th, the arrow, what have you, over the gutter cap, it's not that big a deal for them because they have the power to do it. But again, it's just watching that ball come off his hand is just fantastic. He's soft at the bottom, but he puts enough on it to make the ball hit hard and get that nice hit at the bottom. It's a very, very unique rotation and very, very unique release, and you see it a lot in the majors. Like I said, you see it at the U.S. Open, and obviously I saw it at the TSC. It looked very similar, the ball motion. If you were to look at his TSC win, and then you look at his U.S. Open win a year or so ago, very similar, very similar.
Now let me ask you this question, Eric, and I know this is it still is quite early as there's still a lot of tournaments left in the year, but do you see Pete Weber as a contender for a Player of the Year award?
Well, obviously, he won that as a major. I don't know, what. There are some more events coming up. I don't know where else he's sitting, but he might have to win another one, of course. But, I don't know how many tournaments they have left in their schedule. I think they've got a swing coming up, and they've got the. Matter of fact, I think the U.S. Open's coming up in a few months. By the way, speaking of the U.S. Open, I think it's Indianapolis. I think it's in Indianapolis, or where is the U.S. Open this year?
You know what? I have to take a look at that. Give me 1 second. But I do know it is coming up, and obviously Pete is, the defending champion, so you would have to think he would be the favorite going in. Like
I said, if they keep going with the same type of U.S. Open pattern, which is like a 1-1 or 2-1, and because of the topography and the way that things develop, more than likely that deep inside shot's going to come around, and the way with his role, how could you not put him top 5 player there? How could you not?
Absolutely. Well, as I'm looking in here, we do have the summer swing coming up, of course, and I know they will be utilizing the 3 new lane patterns, which I believe are the Badger, Wolf, and Bear. I don't know what it is with them in the animal patterns, but, whatever whatever makes them happy, I suppose.
Well, all I could say is, roar. I don't know. Roar. I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, the U.S. Open is in Columbus this year.
Columbus, Ohio. Okay. So once again, U.S. Open, 1-1, 2-1 ratio, no more than 2-1. It's got the same characteristics they're going to develop more than likely, that deep inside shot. And how could you not, with his role, how could you not put him top 5 player.
Yeah.
And I believe it's round robin, 24 games of match play, I believe, and that kind of situation. And the cream normally rises to the top. So you look at him and guys like him, Barnes and, Mika and all these guys, and of course Belmo and Oscu, the guys who can do something that no one else can do.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, and considering the amount of talent right now on the tour, and some of the front runners, including Sean Rash, someone else that was a guest on our show, Scott Noren. I mean, there's a lot of top players out there, and in Belmo, obviously. There's a lot of top players, and of course, I do want to mention the PBA League finished up as well, which Pete also happened to have a championship with that. Very interesting. The New York City WTT Kingpins with Billie Jean King helming it there. Walked away. Tommy Jones, of course, part of that team, also on the telecast, and I don't know. It was very interesting. I thought that the finals were done well. I don't know about if I would say I enjoyed everything about the PBA League, but it did pay fairly well to the bowlers. I know first place paid $75,000, divided up evenly between the bowlers, with a smaller share though for the alternate, which was Kelly Kulik.
Is that divided within 5 or 6?
I'm sorry.
They divide that money between 5 players or 6 players?
Well, it's 6 players, but she gets the smaller cut because she's the alternate.
Okay.
And, they took out the Motown Muscle with Jerome Bettis. And, I was reading actually an article not too long ago by a friend of our show, a friend of yours as well, Fred Eisenhammer. For those of you who don't know, Fred Eisenhammer is a former LA Times editor and writer for the Chicago Tribune, and does some great work for the LA Examiner. If you have a chance, please research his work. But he wrote an article talking about how the teams were really not city teams, and what he meant by that was everything was bowled in one bowling center. Now, Eric, I agree with him in the aspect that I think if you have a true PBA league, they should be bowling in different cities, establish fan bases other than in just one bowling center.
Well, obviously this was the beginning of something that, down the road, I'm sure teams in all the cities across the country, that would probably be make it really something special. But this was the inaugural start of this. How well it's going to do, I guess time will tell. I watched a little. I thought it was interesting. Team bowling. When I think of team bowling, I think of collegiate bowling. I think of maybe the nationals, like the USBC nationals. And obviously, team bowling there is really exciting for the better players who like to get together and play on the great teams, and maybe team bowling from back in yesteryear, which is what I think they're trying to bring back. I don't know how well it. I thought it was okay. I guess I'm just so used to the singles competition that when I watched it, I thought it was okay. But I guess it's just another form of bowling. But it didn't knock my socks off. It didn't look like I'm going, like, ooh, It's okay. But for the players, it's just another avenue, another way for them to make a few dollars. And, of course, any chance you get, if you get drafted on a team, you got to like it because you have a chance to make some extra money and, you get to be a part of doing something that's unique and kind of special. But the sad part is it seems like across the country, team bowling, for the most part, has kind of gone by the wayside. Leagues have diminished tremendously, and the team bowling is not that, it's just not as popular as it used to be. I don't know. Maybe this can revive it. I don't know. I just don't know.
Well, one would have to hope. Now, Eric, I know you didn't put your name into the hat this year, but would you see yourself in the upcoming years putting your name in the hat to be drafted for possibly if they expanded the league?
Probably not. Like I said, you don't see, obviously you don't see too many senior bowlers, and me being over 50, you don't see too many of those on the team. You got Weber, and you might have Walter Ray on one of the teams, but, the true superstars of the game, they're going to put on a team. But there was a little bit of, they seem to draft players who maybe they're friends with, or maybe just because of the way they socialize. For instance, as you know, Michael Haugen didn't get picked this year, and Michael's a pretty good player, and he used that as a redemption thing to go out there and show these guys, you should have picked me. And he went out and he won a tournament back in Detroit, and kind of showed them and kind of put it in their face. So Michael's been out there a lot of years. He's a good player. I mean, he won the TSC, won 2 or 3 titles now. Mike's a good bowler, and he couldn't get put on a team. So I think there's a little bit of kind of like a little bit of nepotism going on there. It's not they just don't pick people based off of points or this or that. It's you put your name in a hat, and they try to build a team. I would think with chemistry, but there's some players who didn't get drafted who are really good bowlers. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm afraid my opinions on that whole thing might get me in a little bit of trouble, so to speak, because I think it's okay. I don't think that's going to solve anything. I don't know what it's going to do. I don't know if it's going to make it popular. Maybe people are going to go out and buy these jerseys. I don't know. It's really hard to take bowling the way it's been presented for the last 30, 40 years and turn it into a league and turn it into a team concept. Maybe it'll catch fire, and maybe people will get excited over team play like they do with other team sports. I mean, that would be the hope, And if that's the case, maybe that is the way to sell it. But I don't know. I don't know where they're going to go with this. I mean, I guess in theory, if it turned into an international thing, and maybe you had 20 or 30 teams playing with maybe first place, I don't know, $1 million or something ridiculous like that, when the money was fantastic, that might create a little bit more excitement. $75,000 is exciting, but like if you're on the winning team and the winning team won $1 million or even $2 million or something like that, because it's a worldwide event, that could be a little more exciting, to be honest with you. Then maybe you get drafted on a team, and maybe it becomes more of like a league, like a real league. I don't know. I mean, they didn't even bowl together when they bowled like in these tournaments. Their single scores counted as the team. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really bowl as a team. They didn't compete when they qualified as a team. They qualified singularly, and then their scores accumulative made the team. So to me, that's not really team play, in my opinion. Now on the TV show, they bowl Baker, which they have to, or they'd be on there for 5 hours. they bowl Baker, and everybody gets a frame, which I think is okay. It's okay. But I mean, the guys do it because it's another way for them to earn more money and to get on TV. And if you get on TV, there's a little bit of incentive money to be made. So why wouldn't they embrace it? But I don't know. You have to, from a fan's part of watching it, I think it's just bowling. It's just another form of bowling. If you're a bowler and you like bowling, you'll watch it. I would assume they're hoping to draw in people who really maybe they want to go, wow, what is this team PBA league? What is this? Or what are the LA Strikers or the Motown Muscle or whatever, stuff like that. Maybe they can merchandise it. Maybe they could sell the product. I don't know. There's a lot of questions to be answered, but the upper echelon of the PBA, they felt that it was a move that they wanted to do and see where it goes. So it's worth a shot. Why not?
I agree. I really feel that the way, if they're going to market the concept of a league, when I think of traveling leagues that I've bowled in, or the Budweiser teams of the past, they did not bowl just in one center. They went to the individual cities. You obviously had a home center. Other teams came to you. You went to other teams.
Well, I always thought, and I mentioned this a few years ago to a few people, if all the major cities had a bowling stadium or arena, and then they had a hometown team, and all these teams would travel amongst, like let's say they play in Chicago one week, and then they go to New York, and then they go to Los Angeles, and then they go to San Francisco, and then they go to St. Louis, and they travel in this traveling league, so to speak. And just like the ball teams do, the baseball teams or basketball teams, they're teams, and they travel all over the country, but they play in these leagues. Now that would really be something special. I don't know if it'll ever get to that, but to me, that would be a professional bowling league, so to speak. That could be interesting. And then maybe you would have each city get behind, you have boosters and you have fundraisers and you get the local charities involved, and you really turned into It's just like they follow the local, like they follow the Lakers or the Clippers or the Kings or the Dodgers or the Angels or the Yankees or the Mets. The point is, that's when you become a special team, and these teams are worth mega millions, and it really becomes something special. Now, you're talking about bowling, and I can't see that picture, but, maybe that to me is when it would be really special. Would be something completely different than like you're watching people bowl league on television in that environment. When you're bowling in these arenas, so to speak, and you have your own hometown, and that to me is when it would be a special league, to be honest with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we touched base on something else as well, and I'd like to kind of segue into that, which is obviously participation. We had talked about leagues going down, and something else that came across your or my desks here not too long ago was the PBA regionals that had occurred. In fact, one that you bowled in Las Vegas, a member-non-member doubles tournament. Fairly interesting experience, especially when you got to see what the scores were in order to qualify. Would you like to tell our audience a little bit about that?
Well, it happened last week here in Vegas at South Point. It was the member-non-member doubles, which means you have a PBA member and a non-member, or two non-members can bowl together, but two members cannot bowl together. And it was a regional, and it was, I think they wound up with about 32 teams, a little bit short of what they normally run. And they put up the USBC white pattern, which is normally a pretty good scoring pattern. And the scores were very good. I mean, they took, the top 8 teams went to the finals. It took 583 over between 2 players for 8 games, which comes to about a 232 or 3 average per person, something like that, over the course of 9 games, over the course of 9 games. And the scores were very high, but, you have a lot of good players in a fairly soft environment, and it was kind of a carry contest. And my partner and I, we bowled very well, and we missed it by 8 pins. We cashed. We each got $400. Nothing overly exciting, but we missed the finals by a mere 8 pins. Well, you could find 8 pins in 9 games anywhere. But it just turned into a little bit of carry the last game. We just didn't carry enough. But that's kind of the environment, I averaged about 240. My partner averaged like 224 or 5. She bowled great, but we were short. And the winning team, from what I understand in the finals, one guy averaged almost 270. I mean, he averaged like 268, and the other guy averaged like 240 plus. So you're looking at 500 a game, which is basically 250 average, which is a 7 or 8 bagger a man. So, when you think about it, you can only miss once or twice, and if you don't carry, the match is over. Well, when you think of stuff like that, you think of league bowling, house shots, high scores. Well, this is technically supposed to be a professional tournament, but they put up an environment there that's kind of high scoring. And when you have good bowlers and you have soft conditions and today's equipment, you're going to have high scores. I would think for people who maybe watch it, it's kind of exciting because you get to see players throw a lot of strikes. But maybe as a competitor, maybe you'd like to see the scoring pace a little bit more, a little lower. So that's, it just depends. But the scores were tremendous, and you better bring your 8 or 9 bagger because your 7 or 8, 6 or 7 bagger wasn't going to be enough. Well, that's it. That's the way it is.
The winners, Andrew Graff and Rick Bernard, I take absolutely nothing away from them, of course. Andrew is a motive staffer as well, and, averaging 270 is, as you said, it is very difficult to compete with that. And, looking at it from my perspective, and without naming names, I've talked to a few other regional and amateur competitors, that I don't know if they're trying to maybe make it where you go out and average 200 and that's going to encourage you to come back and bowl again, but I'll tell you point blank, if I'm looking at a cut score and I'm thinking to myself, man, I have to average 235 on a PBA condition to cash, let alone advance in the match play, and to win the tournament, I'm having to average 270. I don't care if you're a house bowler, a league bowler, an amateur competitor, or a national touring pro. That's a lot of score. And I'll be perfectly honest when I say that doesn't encourage me to want to bowl. That discourages me from wanting to bowl because now I'm thinking to myself, I don't need to be a shot maker. I need to be a carry artist. Now, from my perspective, I think that hurts participation. What would you think, Eric?
Well, that's a tough question to ask, because you're going to have the people who bowl and go, wow, I averaged like 215, 220, and I almost cashed, or I averaged 230 and I just missed. Next time I'll get it. I'm just a hit away. Because you figure you average 230, it's a 5-bagger every game, okay? And with a little rapper tap here and there, now I'm in the finals. I'm going to bowl again. There's that mentality. Or you have the mentality like, oh, scores are ridiculous. I can't keep up with these people. The scores are too high. That's not professional bowling. I thought professional bowling was supposed to be this, and that, stereotyped into a certain way. So you've got two fields of thought on this. Most people, they like good scores, because that's what, when bowlers can throw a lot of strikes and the strings happen, then bowlers can get more animated. They could run things out. People seem to like that. But then when it gets too high, then you hear people say, oh, they're too easy, this is ridiculous. It's like there's a level. Like as soon as it gets to, people start averaging 260, 270, 280, now it's like, it's ridiculous. But then again, if everyone's averaging 160, 170, 180, 190, or 2-0, this is ridiculous. This is too hard. I don't want to do this. I quit. So it's a fine line. And I guess if you're going to err nowadays, the mind thought of whether it's a proprietor or the lane man or the patterns that they pick and this and that, I think they always want to err on the high side. They don't really want to err on the low side. Some proprietors say, I want the lanes real difficult. Some proprietors say, I want to make the lane softer. Most proprietors like scores. Because scores is what makes people come in and bowl. If scores, that's just with your normal league player. And a lot of times it's for your tournament bowlers too. But then there's a special breed that says, you know what, this is just way too easy. It's way too easy. I want them to be more challenging. And then you do have some people who like that. But you know what? Whether the scoring pace is 230, 240, 250, you still have to bowl well, okay? You may not like it, but you still got to do something well enough to strike a lot to carry.
Well, there's no arguing that, and I don't argue that. But would you agree that a scoring pace like that tends to take away from the shot maker?
It depends on what you want to call a shot maker. Someone who throws the ball over the same board or two shot after shot, or someone who can put a lot of hand in the ball, can open up the lane and create a lot of area to carry. In their mind, they're making good shots. It doesn't matter that they're throwing it all over the lane, but in their brain, they're making a good shot. So and again, this is where you don't want to step on people's toes, and you got to be careful of what you say, because people get so offended. A good shot maker nowadays is a lot different than, say, a good shot maker 10, 15, 20 years ago, or even 30 years ago. So it just depends. I guess there's just different ways to look at it. I'm a little more old school. I'd rather see the pace 210, 215, 220. But it's really hard to make that pace. Nowadays it's either low or it's real high. It's very difficult to put a scoring pace right in the middle. They try. A lot of times they try, but especially with today's bowling balls and the way the lanes blow open. You could start with a lane that's kind of medium to challenging, and after so many games, it could actually become very nice. So there's just so many variables, and so the guys who strike a lot, good, okay, great. You struck a lot, good scoring. But if the lanes are more challenging, which they've been in the past, maybe the tournament director or whoever says, you know what, these teams may not come back. We need to soften them up a little bit. Why? Because I need people to come bowl. So you think it shouldn't be that way, because it does say professional, but unfortunately, these people want people to come bowl, and nowadays, with the way the economy is, people don't want to show up if things are challenging, because they don't practice enough to be able to handle it. So if they know that the lanes are going to be fairly easy, well, hey, you know what? Maybe we can carry and keep up with everybody else. Again, it's a tough mentality. It just depends on how you want to look at the game or a sport. Is it a sport when you can go out and average 270? Oh, I guess. Is it? In golf they have certain courses where the scores are really low, and then they have courses that are more difficult, just like in bowling. But I don't know. I think it takes away. To a certain degree, I think it takes away the credibility and the professionalism of it when guys can go out there and average 260 or 270. But then again, if somebody like Belmo or Pete Weber or Parker Bone or one of the superstars out there, if they went out and averaged that, they'd say, God, those guys are great bowlers. But then again, if a local guy does it, they'll say, God, those lanes are walled up and they're really easy. So that's the problem. And that's why bowling, for the most part, doesn't get the credibility that it should kind of deserve, because that's why it's really hard. Again, you're back to that thing. Is it really a sport when you can go out and average 270? Or on the same token, they could redo the lanes and you go out there and average $190. That same guy who's averaging 270, I can watch him average $180 in a heartbeat, just because that condition has changed. Does that mean you're a great bowler and you should be, So see, that's the problem that's the biggest problem with the sport of the game of bowling, because the variables are out the window. But I knew you knew the scores were going to be good on that. They were good, and you knew it was going to be that way. It was that way the day before in the non-champions tournament. The scores were through the ceiling. By the way, our friend Wesley Lowe, the 15-year-old,
yes.
he won the tournament, and his last 4 or 5 games, I think he averaged about 280. I mean, scores are through the ceiling, and that's because they want people to come back. They want people to say, wow, it was fun. I want to do it again. Pay more money. Come on, come back. Can you blame them?
No, and one thing that, obviously, Eric, and as people who have listened to our show in the past know, we've never been afraid to voice an opinion or two.
Well, it is what it is. It is what it is. I mean, everyone's trying to make a buck, obviously. From a proprietor standpoint, they love it. It gives the place a good reputation. Scores are good. I want to come back. You want people there. You don't want to go, God, that place was horrible. What a brickyard. I don't want to go back there. Forget it. I ain't driving 4 or 5 hours to go bowl on that garbage. No way. Forget it. See, there's that mentality. I mean, you've been around. Your dad runs a bowling center. The house shot. It's pretty soft. It's pretty easy.
Oh yeah.
Just like they all are. Can you imagine if they went out there and made them all very difficult? If they made them all 2-1? If they did if they put the U.S. Open shot in every bowling center across the country and say, this is how we're going to do the lanes, 2-1, that's it, done. Do you know how many people would quit? Even how many more people would quit?
Well, and I don't argue that, and as and as you well know, as my past, my past as a tournament coordinator myself, I've been in that same situation on many of occasions where it's like, you have to make that determination. Do we soften them up or do we make them hard? Personally, as you well know, for me, I grew up kind of in the old school mentality that I'm a 230 average house bowler, but, I like being able to go to a tournament and having to grind out 200. That doesn't bother me. I like averaging 2-0 and, making a cut or leading a tournament. To me, that is a little bit more, at least in my opinion, what makes professional bowling or competition bowling true. Now, is that something where I would say, I take away from a guy like Andrew Graff who averaged 270 on a soft condition? Of course not. Obviously, it's an incredible feat no matter what. You could have peanut butter on the lanes for that matter, and if you average 270, you still average 270. So it's just a very fine line. I know during our Laughlin Cup event, we were able to choose a pattern that matched up very well for the house, that lowered the scoring pace, but it was still at a reasonable rate. I think that might be something that coordinators might need to take into consideration as well. Just because a pattern is a 220 pace and a low friction house, you go to a high friction house, all of a sudden you're averaging 240, 250. I think that might be something that's overlooked, at least in my opinion, for some of these different organizations, including the PBA.
Well, that's correct, and that's why Kegel is so important. And as you know, the PBA, they do not use Kegel patterns. And they used to in the years past, but for the most part, they use their own version of what the patterns that they've come up with. So, the USBC, they do use Kegel patterns, but they have different types. They have sport patterns. They've got just regular patterns for leagues, and like the USBC white, the red, and the blue. They're all very similar. One's a little higher scoring than the other. One's in the middle. But you know what? They all play kind of similar. And for better players or good bowlers, they're going to shoot big scores on that. So, like I would say, you can look at this many different ways, but the bottom line is people need to show up and bowl, whether it's low scoring or high scoring. The biggest problem that they have nowadays is they don't get the entries. They don't get people to show up and bowl. No matter what you put out there, whether you make them really easy or really hard, people don't show up and bowl. And I think, honestly, I hate to say it, but I think if the bowlers know that the scores are going to be pretty decent and the shots can be a little softer, I actually think you got more chance of people showing up knowing if it's going to be, let's say they're going to put the shark pattern out or some pattern that's really challenging. I think you'll have less people show up. As pathetic as the turnout kind of was at the doubles, and the one they had before that, they had like 64 teams. They had a great turnout. But this one, the turnout was low. But if, let's say, they would have advertised, let's say, again, a really difficult pattern, I think it would have been worse. Because even though bowlers, they always say they want a challenge, they want this, they want that, but I think for the most part, the majority of them, they would prefer the lanes to be a little softer, to be honest with you.
It's interesting to see that mentality for sure.
Well, that's what's changed. That's how, that's what I call the fast food mentality. They don't want to practice as much. They want to go buy the most aggressive bowling balls and do the least amount to it and have all the area and strike a lot. And nobody really wants to practice like they used to. And like I said, if they did put a U.S. Open or a really challenging sports shot up across the country on all the houses, oh my God, these people would have to go practice. They'd have to get coaches. They'd have to work hard on their game. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that. That went away many, many years ago. So now and they know it. That would just kill it completely. Even though it's in trouble right now. That would really hurt it. Yeah. And everybody knows it. Everybody, everyone's trying to make a living. And this thing we try to do on the weekend as a weekend warrior, bowl the regionals and what have you. Yeah, would you like to say, yeah, I won the tournament, I averaged 220 or 219, 218, I bowled great, I won the tournament, and I won $2,000 or $3,000? Or would you want to say, yeah, I bowled really great this week and I averaged 265 or 270, and I won $2,000, I won $3,000, whatever I won, and guess what? I won the tournament averaging 260, or I won the tournament averaging 220. Either way, I won the tournament. Now, well, it was a carry contest. Yeah, but you got to do the right thing to carry. And that same person who bowled well in that environment, if you give them another environment, they may not average 200. Well, over the course of a year, that's what usually separates the better players from the average players, just to just a normal player. It's how do you compete over all these patterns or conditions? But for the most part, most of the time the conditions are pretty good scoring. They normally don't make them really challenging unless somebody says, you know what, we're going to make them hard and the scoring pace is going to be low. For instance, like the U.S. Open or the majors in general. That's just the way it is.
That's it. I'm going back to all urethane equipment and we're bringing back lacquer for every house.
Yeah, and we're going to bring back. We're going to get rid of the air conditioning, and we're not going to have electricity anymore. And there's just you have to, and I believe in the old ways, but you have to modernize yourself a little bit, or don't do it, or don't. You know what? If you're going to cry about the high scoring pace, then don't bowl, because it is what it is. You're gonna have it, and the good players are gonna shoot big scores, especially when the lanes are a little soft, and maybe the marginal players, maybe they're gonna shoot good scores when the lanes are soft too. But it was soft for everybody. So, certain players are going to strike a little bit more than others, but guess what? It was soft for everyone. I mean...
It's an equal playing field. It's
equal, but it's just the pace was high, but it was still equal. And honestly, it was fair left or right, which is always a challenge. I give them that credit. I mean, you could score big on the right, you could score big on the left. And that's always a problem. That seems to be taken care of. And, I think that tournament served its purpose for meaning it gives everyone a chance. If you do the right thing, you can't really complain. The staff there does a great job. The lanes are nice. You get treated very well. Moniak does a great job in that regard.
Sure.
and they give you a venue to bowl in. I mean, they don't have to. They really don't make too much money off the deal. I mean, most of the time, I think they even lose a little bit of money. I mean, why should anybody host these tournaments for the most part? They don't really have pro-ams, what have you. Maybe they help the guys go downstairs, gamble a little bit, put some money in the machines, do something. But for the most part, they do it because they love the game, they love the sport. That's why and those are the people who seem to like to host tournaments. It's not a big money maker. You know what I mean?
Oh no, I mean there's no doubt about that. And I've said this before, and I've written about this as well. Obviously I have opinions of how I'd like to see scoring paces and things of that nature, but I'm also of the belief that there is a combination of the old school mentality and embracing the modern game. Obviously I throw some very great equipment. You throw some very great equipment that's high powered nature. Having to learn bowling is just a little bit different than what it used to be. Instead of being, as we've talked about many times before, instead of being so much about precision shots, it's about knowing what ball to have in your hand, knowing what hand position to have, what rotation.
There's no doubt the technology. It is definitely the technology definitely overrides a lot of the situation. It almost is greater than the players. But then again, when you watch the players on TV, especially in the majors, you still have great players getting to the shows most of the time, and there are great players. So as good as the technology is, you still have to have great talent. Now, maybe in the regional levels, maybe it's a little different playing field, or when they put up a little softer environment, it lets guys who are maybe not as talented score really well. Well, but that's because they're trying to create people. They want them to come bowl. And if it's too difficult, in other words, if the shot is so challenging, then they don't come play. If they know it's going to be that way year in and year out, they're not going to come back. But again, there's that fine line. If the scores get too high, then they say, "Oh, it's just too high. I can't compete with these guys." And then if it's too low, it's the other way. So it's really tough.
Sure.
You don't want it to be way too low. You don't want it to be way too high. You'd love to see it in the middle, but nowadays it's hard to put anything in the middle. That's why a lot of the Kegel patterns can do that.
Yes.
And fortunately, we had one of them at our tournament at the Laughlin Cup, and that was definitely in the middle, and the scoring pace proved it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that, you say, well, they should put that pattern out all the time. Well, you think they should, but they don't, because then some people will get pissed off with it and go, I'm not coming back to bowling. Because when they have some of these tournaments, like that doubles tournaments, for instance, they have one at the beginning of the year, they have one at the end of the year. So this was the one at the beginning of the year, and they're going to have another one there in either October or November. They'll have it again. And, they may lay down the same pattern, probably something similar, because the last couple of times the scores were lower. So this time they wanted to go with a little, make it a little higher. And it was. It absolutely was.
Well, as we're closing in on the end of our show here, I'd like to throw that out to our listeners as well, our new listeners and our old listeners. What do you guys think? I mean, when you go bowl a tournament, do you like seeing the higher pace? Do you like seeing the lower pace? Do you think the PBA should be more prestigious? Do you think it's a big difference between the local level, the national level, the regional level? Send us in your opinions. You can reach us at bowlingevolved@gmail.com, on our Facebook page at facebook.com/bowlingevolved. Or, of course, on our Twitter at Bowling Evolved, or visit us online at bowlingevolved.com. Eric, I think I plugged everything there, right?
Another shameless plug, but I'll add one more thing to this conversation, and then I'll let it go. Back around 2000, when I was still out there, when Kegel, the PBA decided to have Kegel do the lanes, and Kegel said, okay, we're going to do the lanes out there for you guys, but we're going to show them how good the players are. We're going to make the lanes more challenging. And we're gonna showcase it, and we'll have our CAT system on the TV show. It'll show the angle, the rev rate, the speed, the accuracy, and we'll show off the players on TV. And in doing so, we're going to do the lanes, and we're going to make them more challenging. We're going to put up some sport compliant shots. Well, I'll tell you what, that lasted about 3-4 weeks or 5 weeks, and the scores were unbelievably low. I mean, you were talking cut scores taken 30, 40, 50 over for the best players in the world. I mean, the patterns were very difficult. The scores are really low. And, the upper echelon of the PBA said this is ridiculous. Matter of fact, the first TV show they had, I think the winning score was like 160 to 180, or just the scores were horribly low on TV. And I think it was Steve Miller, when he was in charge at the time, he said, I can't showcase my players when nobody can throw a double on TV. I mean, this is just too ridiculous. There's no emotion. There's no nothing because the guys can't double. So it was like a week or two later, the scores were really low again. And once they got to the TV show, they were basically told, you need to make these lanes a little bit softer on the show. I don't care what you do during the week. I mean, in other words, the guys can average 210, 215 during the week. But when it comes to that TV show, I want them to shoot some scores. And matter of fact, that was the show that Weber either shot 270, 280, or 290, or 290 something against Haugen. And he got all excited, he got all demonstrative, and he was running shots out, and the scores were through the ceiling on the TV show. And I thought it was so funny because we bowled on those lanes all week, and the scores were unbelievably low. But on that TV show, they basically walled them up, and they said, no, we're going to have good scores. Because we can't showcase the best players when they can't throw a double. It's hard to show emotion when you can't throw a double. And they changed it. So that whole concept lasted that brief little time, and then they tweaked the patterns, changed the patterns, did this, did that, and the next thing you know, the scoring pace was back to normal. But I mean, all these things through the years have been tried. So it was just, lane conditions has always been an issue. It's always been at the forefront.
Absolutely.
It should be about the money that you play for, but the lane conditions has always been the issue. So this has been around at least the last 10, 15 years at least.
I was going to say money is always a topic we can go into for days on end, but since we do try to keep this around a 45-minute to an hour show, I don't think we want to jump back into that.
No, that's just, like I said, it's just interesting when you talk about scores. But it's true, whether the lanes are real difficult or real tough, the better players normally rise to the top. If it's 240, the great players are averaging 240. If it's 220 or 20, the great players are averaging 202. So talent is talent, especially on the national tour.
Sure.
In the regional program, things are a little bit different. But on the national tour, doesn't matter what the pace is, you still have, usually it's the best on top.
Absolutely.
Usually. That's the way it is.
Well, again, we throw that out to our audience as well. We'd love to hear your opinions. Please feel free to write us in.
Yes.
Or write into us, however you want to say that. Finishing out here, we do have a couple quick announcements. We jump into our email bag here. Oh, actually, before I do that, last show we had Boom Apparel, Derek Johnson, fantastic product. If you haven't had a chance to check them out,
go Boom.
Yeah, go Boom. Look them up on Facebook. I believe it's /Boom Apparel. You can Google search them. They're on Pinterest. They're all over the place. Great products. They design jerseys similar to the Gemini or High Five wear. I know a lot of bowlers are using them. Jason Sterner, who is also on our show, Paula Vidal. We'll have some here shortly, and they're really great stuff. But we're announcing officially tonight will be our first giveaway since the Jet Bowling Burner promotion. We will have a T-shirt giveaway. That will be a Boom Apparel Bowling Evolved T-shirt. Go
Boom or go bust.
I like that. All you have to do is like our Facebook page and like their Facebook page. We will have a link to that in the description of this post when we put it up, and of course a separate entity as well. When they hit 1,000 likes on their page, which is approximately 300 likes on each of our pages, we'll be up to about 750. We will choose one winner to receive a free T-shirt from your friends at Boom Apparel. Guys, again, their quality products are amazing. Please check them out. Derek is just a fantastic individual, big fan of the sport, and Eric, I feel very privileged to have him associated with us.
Yeah, I enjoyed our conversation, and I can't wait to get those shirts. They should be they're coming, all right?
Yeah, they should be on their way, and once we get them, I'm sure we'll have some pictures for our friends at home.
Absolutely, we're gonna show those bad boys. Can't wait.
Absolutely. Also, in the email box today, I did get a message from our webmaster, Tyler Hunsaker. A big shout out to him, who takes care of the Bowling Evolved website, our Facebook page, etc., etc. We have now been downloaded, Eric, in 43 different countries around the world.
No way.
Yep. So
They get the honor and privilege of listening to me and you and all these countries.
scary as that sounds.
Wow, that is really something. I
between
mean,
between our two accounts, Bowling Evolved accounts, and our likes on our subscribers on YouTube, Twitter, and et cetera, we've had over 1,000 followers. We've been downloaded over 10,000 times over the course of the last 10 months or so, which is really fantastic. You know, we tend to have wide variety of guests and situations, and I just want to say to all of our listeners, thank you so much. It's really amazing to see the analytics. There might only be one or two of you in Belize that have downloaded us, but to our friends in Belize, I also say thank you very much. It's a real privilege and honor, and hopefully we have the opportunity to keep bringing you this show week in and week out.
and all I want to say is, what is wrong with you people? Get a life. Stop listening to us. No, I don't want to say that, but it is kind of funny though.
Yeah, we most of it's been in the United States, of course, but our other four countries that we've been downloaded the most, we've had I believe it's 200 downloads in Japan, 500 downloads in Australia,
Well,
several hundred in Canada. It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat.
well, it is, and that just goes to show how obviously our sport slash game is played all over the world, and people are interested. For the sake of me, I don't know why, but they're interested in what we have to say. That is scary that anybody be interested in what you had to say.
Well, I was going to say the same thing about you, my friend, but then
I know that. I just beat you to it.
yeah. The only thing I had to say about that was, I mean, you know, how much credibility can you give to a left-hander, though? That's my only point. So
Well, just remember, I'm the only person in my right frame of mind. Remember that. Keep that in mind.
that is a good point. That is a good point.
I have to help you out with that one because it is true. Look it up.
Oh, well, you know, it's all in good fun, and obviously, you know, Eric, we've done this for now, you know, 20 plus episodes, and of course our video shows and whatnot, and you know, I've loved every minute of it, and any article that I write, anything that we've had an opportunity to do, it's really been a labor of love, and again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for allowing this to be possible.
Absolutely, I enjoy it, my friend. It's been quite the run, and hopefully we can do this for another, I don't know, 50, 60 years. You know, by that time I'll be dead. But we'll continue to broadcast from beyond. I will continue to send in my broadcasts.
I don't know, Eric. I think it'd be pretty interesting to see 110-year-old Eric Forkel talking about bowling here. That'd be something else.
Well, you never know. It is possible. Sometimes I feel that way these days when I throw a ball, but lately, the fact that we have something to talk about is good. I mean, you can always find there's a lot of negative. There's a lot of negative thoughts and there's a lot of problems. You know, you're always looking for more money to bowl for, more of this, more of that. But you know what? At least there's something to play on the weekends. And we talked about it before on the national tour. You know, they don't bowl nowhere near as the amount of tournaments that we used to bowl out there. And of course, that's a shame. But you know, maybe hopefully something might change down the road. You know, hope is eternal. Maybe something will change. Especially for the guys who try to make a living at it. Now that I'm 50, heck, I wish there was, you know, 25 senior tournaments to bowl and they were on TV and just like they used to be years ago. But unfortunately, that's not happening right now. But there is one quick thing. There is word that in the future there could be a new senior tour developing. Ron Moore and a few other people are in the process of putting something together. There's an article about it in the Bowler's Journal. You need to check that out. You go to this month's Bowler's Journal, and there's a story about it, talking about the possibility, real good possibility of a senior tour that will be sponsored and what have you, and decent money, etc. It's in the plans. It's in the works. It sounds promising, and of course, if anybody who's over 50, it's kind of a nice thought to see if it happens.
Absolutely. I'd love to see it get off the ground. I know, you know, we've discussed, you know, just supporting anything bowling. And, you know, I say to our listeners, too, just, you know, in all honesty, you know, there's so many things that are easy to complain about with the sport of bowling. But complaining's fine. But remember, it is still a fun activity. It's something that if you are going to complain, try to find the answers to make it better. You know, it's so easy to just say you hate something. And it's a lot more difficult to find a way to make it what you want it to be. So, I challenge you guys, do what you can to improve the sport. I know that Eric and I volunteer a lot of our time to doing that, and there's a lot of other great people out there that do the same. I know even locally they're going to be doing, a local scratch pro-am for our kids, which, for any of our listeners in the Colorado River area, I'd say to come down here on, I believe it's going to be April 14th. I guess April 14th. They're doing a little pro-am utilizing some of the local regional pros here in the Laughlin area. I mean, little things like that are what helps breed a new generation of bowlers and makes the sport more exciting. I wish more people would do that. And, Eric, I know you see it quite frequently. People just don't have the inclination to continue furthering the sport along.
No, and that's the reason why it's that's why leagues are down, and a lot of the open play is not down. The open play is good. Birthday parties are fantastic, but when it comes to organized play and all that other stuff, it really does seem like it's going down the wayside. And of course, scratch bowling is kind of a dinosaur. So anytime anybody promotes anything scratch, you got to give them great kudos and thank them for trying to do it, because that's a difficult thing to make happen. And it is obviously a labor of love. I mean, we do this because we love the game of bowling, and there are a lot of people out there like us who have that same feel. You just need to get the right people to have that feel and try and get the right kind of backing and promotion behind it to make it kind of what it used to be. But I don't know if it'll ever go back to that. I just don't know if it ever will.
Well, one could always hope, but with that being said, that is going to take us to the end of our show. Again, we want to thank you very much for tuning in and listening this week. Tune in next time. We will have more to talk about, because that's the one thing about bowling. There's always something to talk about. But ladies and gentlemen, for Eric Forkel, I've been Dustin J. Markowitz. Have a great night.
Good night.